Oh my God. The amount of technical hurdles to get through this and get set up today was unbelievable. You would think I am like trying to broadcast from Jupiter or something the way this got set up. It's crazy. All right, we're getting started in a minute. We're getting started real soon, real quick. Why is this all over the place? Jesus. All right, go over here. This needs to be here, and this needs to be way bigger. That needs to be there, and that's okay. And this comes over like that. Boom. Oh man, I know the timer. I know it's a thing. We're doing the best we can. All right.
And now we'll see how good you are.
No matter what anybody tells you, words and ideas can change the world.
Ready to work.
All right. Wow, that's really yellow today. Well, we're just going to have to live with that. People listening to the podcast, just imagine I'm in a field of sunflowers. I forgot what the yellow flower was. Just, yeah, the camera and the light, it's still crazy bright and sunny outside, so it's throwing everything off. I know. Light is the enemy of recording. I know. But we're going to make it work. We're going to make it work. So, hello, hi. It's good to see you again. Thank you for being here. Hi, hello. Tonight, tonight, I don't know if you know this, but tonight is a major thing. This is a big deal, and I'm not entirely being hyperbolic. I'm being a little hyperbolic, but it's not the end of the world. But this is important because this is the start of a new series. This is a thing I've been thinking about doing and wanting to do that I've done individually with clients. I've done individually with people, but now it's time to kind of make this thing bigger and broader. So tonight, I'm gonna start teaching you how to make your second draft the best second draft there's ever been a second draft to, and that's a big swing and a big promise. And I'm fully planning on delivering. This is by no means the only iteration of this. We're gonna talk a couple different times and a couple different ways about second drafts, but this is a big deal because I think this stretch of writing is honestly my favorite. I really think, hello, hi. I think this is really my favorite chunk of writing because so many formative things happen here. In the second draft, you start to take form and shape out of the pile of disaster and mess and hot garbage and whatever other phrase you want to use when it comes to your first draft. We're going to start shaping something out of whatever and turn it into a book. By the end of the second draft, you pretty much have some idea as to what your book more or less looks like. It's not perfect. It's not done. I'm not saying that all of a sudden, second drafts go right to publication. Please don't do that. Please don't do that. But it's certainly a big, major step forward. And it's also the birth of, authorial voice and narrative voice. It's the first time you really get to see how a writer is going to communicate to a reader. You really get to see all the writer tools on display, and you get to find out what writer tools are lacking or totally absent. And then you get to do something substantial about it in the next draft, the third draft. But for now, for the second draft, I love this. This makes me happy. This thrills me in a big way. The other thing I really like about it, and maybe it's wrong to like it this way, is that in a second draft, it's a threshold. And you will watch writers people whose work you've read, people whose company you enjoy, you will watch them fall to the wayside. The second draft is that first line, that first marker or indicator where the hacks and the people who aren't going to finish start to disappear. And the people who remain in the late second draft and forward, they're the ones who stand a pretty good chance at, making this happen. The second draft is your make or break point. And I love that. I love how purely honest that can be. You find out damn quick if you have the chops to do this creatively, not even as a career, but just to do it. That is infinitely fascinating. And as somebody who works with writers all the time, yes, within about, a paragraph or so of reading your work or 10 minutes of a conversation, yeah, I can totally tell you if you're going to make it or not. And I'm always happy to be pleasantly surprised and proven wrong. But by and large, I got a pretty good radar for this. This is really such an amazing point, such an amazing crucible for a writer and their art and their view on creativity and the thing they're making. This is that transformative chrysalis moment where the thing you just sort of made every Saturday for a couple hours, or the thing you kind of just did on Google Docs, whatever, suddenly turns into a book that someone's going to give you money for. And I think that's the most amazing idea. I think that make or break potential. I think that idea of making a career, just doing this over and over, is fantastic. I love second drafts. They can still be messes. They can still be packed with problems. They can have 15 or 16 bajillion things, but they're also still a lot of fun. And I'm hoping, praying that some of that stuff comes across. This is fun. It's hard, but that doesn't immediately make it not fun. There's nothing wrong with a little challenge. There's nothing wrong with a little fuel. There's nothing wrong with a little push/shove in a direction. Second drafts will change your life. This second draft especially, it means everything. So let's make it the best second draft possible. Let's learn the tools. Let's learn the steps. But to do that, we have to come to an agreement first. We're not going to be able to do this unless we're on the same page, literally, metaphorically, and figuratively. We're not going to be able to really click, and you're not going to be able to really get this done without doing some stuff first. So what I need you to know is two things are going to happen over the course of this, not only this series, but your effort in a second draft. You've got to agree to those two things happening. If you're not cool with those two things happening, please feel free to enjoy other content available wherever you acquired this audio or video. And then please go have a really nice day, evening, morning, weekend, night, whenever it is you are checking this out. This isn't going to be for you if you don't agree to these two things. I'm sorry. I love you. You're still doing great. But you got to make this agreement with me. I'm in this and you're in this, so we can put this together. Item number 1. If you haven't by now, you are going to learn how to finish your work in your second draft. Either you're going to learn how to finish or you're not going to finish, and then the road comes to a dead stop. That's item number 1. You got to be okay with learning how to finish. You got to be okay with reaching into some reserve of discipline and reserve of focus that you maybe didn't know you had. And you got to be okay with tapping it and using it, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. And we're just going to be spinning our wheels and delaying the inevitable stall or excuse pile or collapse. So that's item number 1. Item number 2, much bigger, much scarier. Over the course of the second draft, I don't care what genre it is. I don't care how big it is. None of that. Over the course of the second draft, you're going to meet yourself, and it is very possible you are going to find that you don't like a lot of things about yourself. Maybe you make excuses. Maybe you like to procrastinate because you're afraid of rejection. Maybe you were just plain afraid of rejection. Maybe you're afraid of success. Maybe you don't really want to be a writer. Maybe you lowball yourself and put yourself in really easy situations so that you don't really have to be challenged. Maybe you just like the idea of writing more than the doing of the writing. Maybe you don't want this to be a job. Maybe you need somebody to come around and yell at you in order to get moving. Maybe you need more encouragement. Maybe you're going to remember a situation where you were in 4th grade and somebody made fun of your short story. I don't know. but you are going to find out a lot about yourself over the course of your second draft. And you should know that that discovery is going to be part of this process. Not so much in like the, here's how you make your second draft better. There's a part of it, it's in there a little bit, but over the course of this draft, however long it takes you, you're going to end up running into yourself. And that's important. That's a real big deal. And if I don't tell you that's coming, you're going to freak out even more than however much you'll freak out when you realize, oh, that is something about me. It's coming. Prepare for it. Plan for it. Gird thy loins or regions and know that it's coming. If you're okay with those two things, that you're going to learn how to finish or not, that you're going to meet yourself, then we can rock and roll. Now, here's the thing. This is second drafts. I am assuming that from just you watching this, listening to this, being here, whatever, I'm assuming your first draft is done. Like done. Not 90% done, not 80-ish% done, not I got a really good idea about being done later. No. It's done. It needs to be done. It's got to be done. That's the baseline for coming in the door and checking this one out. Your first draft needs to be done. If your first draft's not done, go finish your first draft, come back, check this out. Okay? It's not going to work. The other thing that some of you, the more, how do I put this, devious, cheat the system kind of people are looking for is, oh, well, if you're going to just teach us how to make a better draft, can't I just apply this to the first draft? I mean, yeah, but that's shitty. Like, I mean, you can. There's nothing wrong with it. It's going to help you make a better draft. But this is specifically designed to work with material you've already produced. And you're going to end up writing that draft anyway in order to use it to do some of the things we're about to talk about. So, yeah, I guess you could shortcut the system or reverse engineer this into your first draft. But then you're going to end up having to redo some of this anyway. So I don't know why you're making it harder for yourself by thinking you're taking a shortcut. Just finish the draft. Let it be terrible. Please, honestly, some of this stuff works way better when your first draft's a disaster. Let it be bad, finish it, and then come over here and we'll do this stuff. Make sense? Clear? Easy? Straightforward? I'm hoping so. Because I know you can do this. None of the things I'm going to talk about tonight are difficult. They're time-consuming. They require a little bit of thought, but writing is the act of making decisions. We make decisions all the time. This will be just fine. You can do this. You just need to sit down and do it. Now, maybe some of you out there have done some version of this before. Maybe there are different ways of approaching things. Other coaches, other editors, book services, scams, grifters, I don't know. Lots of people have engaged in lots of things, some good and some not. So maybe you've heard some of the stuff and maybe you've done some of the stuff. I'm going to ask you to put that all over there to one side. Not because it's bad or wrong, but because this is my toolbox. And I don't mind commingling tools, but the idea is we're going to give you as many tools as possible to do your best as possible. Sometimes this is messy. I don't know how else to say it. Sometimes this is going to be messy. Sometimes it feels like you're going to be a million miles away from drafting. And that's part of it. You're going to have to go a million miles away so that you can come back. That I don't know how else to tell you. The point of that is because we are trying to get you, wherever you are, away from thinking about your story only as a story, only as this thing where you just slap the keys for a while and, oh my God, I guess it's kind of a story. I'm getting you away from that because I want you to start thinking from this point forward. Every step from here on out moves you closer to selling a book, whether that's traditionally published or self-published or just given away on street corners. Every step from here on out moves you closer to that goal. Everybody and their mother tells me how important that goal is to them. Hey, guess what? This is the way to go. That said, though, you really can't shortcut this. I'm going to lay out a couple tools tonight, and they're going to take you some time. You might not like that. That's not my problem. It's going to take you time because it's worth doing it this way. Because if you lay these steps out now and organize it early, then later this becomes infinitely easier. If you delay on this, I'll do it later. You're just going to make it harder for yourself. And maybe some people are into that. Maybe that's going to help you in some strange creative way. But I'm going to try and make this as straightforward as I can, as frequently as I can. But I can't necessarily guarantee the difficulty level. That's on you. Clear? Everybody good so far? We're looking good. Cameron, yeah, we're doing great. All right, mouthful of tea, and then we're going to move on a bit. So hang out a second. Watch it go to an ad right here. All right. The tea today is, oh God, it's not English breakfast. It's English other. It's like English caravan. It's not bad. It's not as heavy as I thought. It's like a bajillion caffeine percent. I am seeing into other dimensions, which is fine because I've been dragging ass all day. It's been a long work day. I'm happy to be here doing this. So, yeah, there's like a large quantity of tea on the side of the desk that I'm going to power through as we cover this stuff tonight. Good question. Thanks for it. By the way, if you're checking this out and you have questions, ask them. Ask them. YouTube people, you're watching this, in the future, down below in the comments, leave questions. I'll answer them. What else am I going to do? I just sit here all day. Leave your comments. Leave your questions. Let's have a conversation about how we can help each other succeed. You're good enough for that. Okay? Now, let's get started with this. Now, I'm going to give you a task. If you're watching this live, you don't necessarily have to do it right away. But if you're watching this after the fact or you're listening to it after the fact, I'm going to give you some things to do, and then you can pause it and come back. We'll count to 3 here so that, there's a sense of pause and accomplishment. Probably podcast people, because of the silence, that's where it'll put an ad, just so you know. But yeah, I'm going to give you some stuff that you're going to need in order to move forward tonight, and just in general, because we're going to start with these tools today, and then when we do this series some more, we're going to take these tools and add to them, and then add to them, and so on and so on and so forth. We're going to start in a different way than we started our first draft. When we do our first draft, I often talk about the story triangle, and I walk through all those things. I'm assuming you're familiar with those concepts. If you're not, and you're checking this out going, what the hell is this? All the story triangle stuff, all the basic stuff is over in, if you're watching the YouTube channel, it's over in the How Do I Write This playlist, which if I knew how to link, it would be up there in that corner. But if you just go back to like the big giant list of videos, you'll see a lot of different content, usually with individual lessons. Those are the things. Normally when we talk about first drafts, I start with characters. But now we're on a second draft. Now we can't do the same thing we did before, because if we do the same thing we did before, we're going to get the same results. So we want to approach a new thing in a new way with a new direction. We're not starting with characters in our story triangle. We're going to start with plot. Specifically, technically we're going to start with all the arcs, plot being first, but we're going to start with arcs. Because when we're building a second draft, the arc is the thing we're going to prioritize in the same way that when we wrote our first draft, it was characters we prioritize. Somebody out there might be wondering, well, what draft do you prioritize world building in? Third or fourth? And when I say prioritize, I don't necessarily mean improve this one thing, whatever it is, to the detriment of the others. I'm just saying we're going to pay more attention to it in the creating process. It'll still, eventually balance out to our story triangle. But we're going to start building this in pieces. And we start with plot because, if we built the characters in the first draft, now they need something to do. And we start with main plot first. But before we can even get there are 3 things you need to do. So open a spreadsheet, get a notepad, Write it down longhand, put it on your phone, whatever it is you got to do. You're going to need to make 2 lists and a thing. Let's put it that way. Here you go. 2 lists and a thing. 1, you are going to need to make a list of all your characters, every single one of them. Start at the top with your main character or main characters, and all the way down, all the way through the story, including your antagonist, including the lady who shows up in one line in page 5. If they're a character, they go on this list. Now, you can either do this in order, like walk through every chapter and do it. That's fine. Nothing wrong with that. You can do this by order of what's priority, like this person's the most in the book. The person at the bottom is in the least. That takes a little bit more time, but it's fine either way. But you want to make a list of all your characters. And that includes characters that are mentioned but not seen. It's every character in this book, whether visible or invisible or present or not present or mentioned or active. Whatever. Make a list of characters. For me, personally, I tell you to do it by priority. It's going to make it easier later, but it's not super critical. It's just a nice way to get yourself a little bit of an advantage now. Write down the list. Main characters. Who's the secondary characters? Who are your tertiaries and your quaternaries? Not that many people have quaternaries, but maybe you have 4 levels of character. Who knows? But list your characters. It doesn't have to be alphabetized. You just got to list your characters. I mean, if you want to alphabetize it, go ahead. But I'm not going to give you a bonus point for it. Just list your characters. That's item number 1. Item number 2, you need a list of scenes in order and numbered. Scene 1, scene 2, scene 3, scene 4, all the way through the book. This isn't just locations. This isn't just big, broad pictures. This is specific locations, specific scenes. So if you're going to end up repeating yourself, you end up repeating yourself, and that's fine. Just make sure it's a different scene and therefore a different number. We need this list numbered. You'll see why when we get to it. But this one's numbered. You can number the character one if you feel like it, but that's less critical. We're going to do enough with both these lists that the particulars there less critical. But number your scenes. Go in order from first page to last page, all the way through. Okay? So we've got a list of characters ranked by either priority or just location, where they show up in the book, or alphabetized. You've got a list of scenes numbered in order through the book, first page all the way down to last page. Here's the third thing you need. You need to be able to get the plot of your story in 1 to 4 sentences that sound like regular people talking. That doesn't sound particularly forced. It's not extra salesy. You don't need to sound really pretentious or anything. You just need to be able to say your plot in 1 to 4 sentences, and it can be real broad. A young woman leaves her home for the first time to explore the new world in college. A group of friends discover that one of their friends has supernatural powers and the government wants them back. A man discovers he can control birds. This is just for you. 1 to 4 sentences for you to help you make the very, very, very critical transition from I'm writing a story to this is the book I'm going to publish. We need to start you here, this minute, from the beginning of our process. We're going to start you thinking about your book as a product, a thing you will sell, as opposed to just this story you kind of, sort of are doing. This is commitment. This is important. This is the first line of discipline. This is the first urgent thing. You're making a book, even if it's the only book you're going to write. Even if this is not the plan to write enough books to pay your mortgage and get away from some of the capitalism and save yourself, wage slavery. Even if you're just, hey, I'm making a book because I want to sell a book. That's fine. But you got to be able to start thinking about your book as a product and less so about oh my God, the story I can't wait to tell you about. Because there's a time and place for that. And this is not that time. and this is not that place. So 3 things: list of characters, list of scenes, and the ability to put your plot into 1 to 4 sentences. It's also not like name that tune. You don't have to do it in the least number of sentences. 1 to 4. Big or small as you want. You get up to 4. A paragraph. All right? I'm going to count to 3. You can pause this. I will assume you will have, accumulated all that material, and you've come back. Count of 3, and then we'll be back. 1, 2, 3. And we're back. So you've got your stuff, right? The reason why I wanted you to lay out your main plot in a paragraph is because I need you to think about it from the top down in a big view. I do not want you thinking about it in terms of this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. I need you to see it from the top down first so that we can drill down later and get way more specific. Because if your top down big view sucks, or you're unhappy with it, or it's confusing, or it wasn't possible for you to narrow down, get it down to 4 sentences, guess what? We're going to fix that today, because you should be able to put your plot into enough words to get it out in 1 to 4 sentences. Anything else is excessive. Either too much detail and you don't know how to shut up, or you've just got too many goddamn things going on. 1 to 4 sentences was plenty. Why did I make you number your characters? Why did I make you number your scenes? Why did I get you to lay those things out? Because it is from those things that we are going to build the skeleton of your second draft. What I want you, look at me right here, come here. What I want you to avoid doing whenever you're making a draft, I don't care if it's your second, your 90th, your third, whatever, any draft that isn't your first. I want you to get away from the habit of thinking and doing a draft where you are just recopying the text and occasionally changing some ideas. That is a very juvenile, incomplete, impatient, and frankly pointless way to go from draft to draft. It's sort of like saying, I want to learn how to swim, so I'm going to watch the gold medal round of the Olympic swim team. I mean, technically it'll teach you how to swim, but you're looking at it the wrong way. If you want to learn how to do a thing, you want to learn how to swim, you need to put your ass in a pool of water and figure out how to make your body work. So it starts with mechanics. It starts with process. And our scene list and our character list, those are our mechanics and those are our process. All right, we're going to start with, let's see, because we're going to end up doing both. So it doesn't ultimately matter where we start. And it's mostly me just explaining both of these to you. So how about we start with, let's start with the character list. It's a little bit crunchier. There's a bit more to it. But I think this step will be good. I'm going to get a mouthful of tea and then we go. You're going to need your character list in front of you. You're going to need your first draft in front of you. All right, character list. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to go through the whole draft, one character at a time, and you're going to highlight in chapters when each character is, there. So, chapter 1. What characters are in chapter 1? Write that down on your list. What characters in chapter 2? Write that down on your list. What characters are in chapter 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Fun fact, if you have like 70 chapters, you're going to be here a while. That's fine. Ideally, though, by the end of this exercise, no matter how many chapters you have, and remember, we're doing this with the first draft, so we're doing this as it is. It doesn't need to be perfect. This isn't an indicator that, oh my God, I need to rewrite everything. No, we're just taking an inventory. Don't judge it, just do it. What characters are in each chapter? Okay? What you're looking for when this is all done is basically a representative sample of what characters are where and what characters are not over the course of a story. Do some characters show up and then disappear? Are some characters just in the beginning and the end? Or some characters just in the middle? You know, for your main character, they're probably going to be in every chapter. Maybe you want to save yourself some, you know, typing or writing or box checking and just go, they're in the whole damn book. That's up to you. This stuff's all for you, for your benefit, Damien. It's all for you. So it's however you want to do it. But more important than your main character, at least in this context, is an accounting of all the other characters. When do they show up? What we're looking for are really, really big gaps. We like gaps because they give us something to fix, and they're not an immediate indication of failure or impending failure or big problems. It's just, hey, look, this character falls off the map for 6 chapters in a row. And then you get to think for a minute, oh, no, they're supposed to, because, you know, they just kind of go away and then they come back and then they're in the book for the rest of the book. I'm not asking you to, like, justify to me why you have the gaps. I'm asking you to look and see what the gaps are. And maybe you have a gap that you didn't realize. Maybe you have a gap where you don't want one. And then you're going to flag it and make a note and make sure that when it comes time to do those chapters or do those things or do something with that character, we don't repeat the process the second time and end up with a character like disappearing and then all of a sudden reappearing. We want to patch that if we want. Now, sometimes, to be fair, that's how you want it. And that's okay. A character who rides in Deus Ex Machina style, they're going to be in the beginning and then disappear and then show up at the end. Gandalf's going to go away for most of the story until he reappears and rides down the hill on the horse. And that's fine. That doesn't make it wrong. But there are going to be times where all of a sudden you're going to sit there and go, where is that character? What happened? I didn't even realize I was doing that. And that's what you want to address here. Do that for every character. Now, some characters, especially as you get to the bottom of your list, they're only going to be in like one chapter, one thing, one time. Fine. Great. Not the end of the world. That's the first thing we're going to do. Now we're going to do this, a similar exercise over here on our scene list, and it's going to help double check the thing we just did with characters. Here's our scene list. All right, get your scene list. For every scene, I want you to write down what characters are in it. If the main character's in all of them, just top of the page. Main character's in every fucking thing. It's fine. It's totally fine. No problem. But scene by scene, who's in every scene? And again, we are looking to see at a scene level and a chapter level, we are looking to see where there are what are referred to as deserts. Big, open, abandoned spaces that you can't immediately go, oh yeah, they're in that because the guy's locked up in space prison or something, or you know, we're jumping time and this is a flashback. If you can't come up with a justification as to why this space needs to be devoid of certain characters, it's something to flag and work on. What we're doing, as we do this both on a per chapter and per scene level, is trying to find the spots of story that are frameworks. You know, when you have a set of scenes with a certain set of characters and it makes sense, they can be moved forward. But when all of a sudden you're like, oh, I need my sidekick. My sidekick disappears for like 3 chapters in a row, and those are really important chapters because they have, you know, this scene, and this scene. Oh, I gotta do something about that. We're looking for the deserts. We're looking for the immediately visible problem areas. Why? Because that's the first thing, if you're traditionally publishing, it's the first thing your editor is going to look for. If you're self-publishing, it's the first thing your reader's going to notice. Does that make sense? For some people, this can be difficult and a pain in the ass because they have so many characters and so many scenes and so many chapters and so much stuff. That might also be a really good moment to stop and go, this character's only in one scene. This chapter is only this one thing. I don't think I need it. Well, then you cut it, and we all move on with our day and go have a sandwich. That's fine. Remember, we're building a second draft out of the basis and guts of our first. Not everything needs to make the transition from first to second. Some stuff is going to get left by the wayside. Some stuff's going to be improved. Some stuff's going to stay the way it is. This is not a process, though. I want to make this one point. This is not a process where like 90% of the first draft stays intact and you're maybe like doing a little bit around the edges or the sides. That's not this. That's not this at all. You can expect to some degree anywhere from 20 to 90% of the story to be changed. Yeah, there are going to be some pieces that survive. They might be small, they might be big, but the vast majority of your work is still in such a state of flux that I would not count on it surviving long term. Maybe it does. Good for you if it does, but don't plan on it. Because even after it goes onto a page, even if as it becomes the first file of the second draft, that doesn't mean it's going to be the second draft next week. But what we're looking for now, as we go through our lists, as we organize all this stuff, we're looking to see what characters show up when, and in what chapters what scenes are. From there, we can start making decisions, and we can start looking at arcs. I'm going to get a mouthful of tea, and then we're going to walk through arcs. We're going to start with main plot arc, and we're going to walk all around. All right? Okay, 2 seconds, mouthful of tea. I've done a ton of talking today. I'm so sorry. You're going to have to just deal with me drinking tea all the time. Okay, stay hydrated, everybody. Ready? An arc. I don't know if we covered this when I did the video on arcs, but I'm going to cover it again. An arc is a progression of events wherein the things in the series of events cause changes, challenges, conflicts, and transformation for characters. Changes, challenges, conflicts, transformations. Your big four. If you have a scene where you can't identify those things, it doesn't always need to be a scene. But we'll get there. We'll get there. But for now, an arc is a progression of scenes, which means it needs to be more than one. You cannot have a one-scene arc. You can have things happen only in one scene, but that's not an arc. That's just an event. That's a different thing. I'll probably do a video about those at some point, but not the same thing. We need an arc. So we need instances with multiple scenes somehow in a row. Maybe that means directly in a row, consecutively, 15, 16, 17. Maybe it means we skip around, like by an even divisible number, like by 15, 17, 19. Maybe we just jump around in big, giant waves. Fine. As long as there are progression across multiple scenes, 2 or more, because you got to introduce and resolve. Though the very least number you normally want to get is 3. Why 3? You need an introduction. You got to start the arc somewhere. You need some amount of development. You got to do something with it now that you introduced it. You got to resolve it. Intro, develop, resolve. Another way to talk about develop is conflict. You got to do something with it. It's got to be a challenge. You got to, the character has to deal with whatever. Maybe you have an arc where the character is struggling with self-doubt. You introduce that they have self-doubt. You show self-doubt in action. You challenge them in that self-doubt, and then you resolve it. 1, 2, 3. Maybe you have loads of development, because the minimum is 3. You can go huge ass arcs with 15, 16, 17, 30, 90, however you need to pace it out. As long as you got a beginning, some amount of development, and an end, it's an arc. The most important thing is that the way the character starts is not the way the character ends. Your start state and your end state are different states. That doesn't mean your character has to live in a different house or, suddenly have, gone from absolute nothing to absolutely everything. But it just doesn't mean that they start their day sitting on their couch eating cereal and they end their next day having, fought every alien in the universe sitting on their couch eating cereal. The problem is when your start state and your end state are similar, if not the same, it makes all the stuff in between the start state and the end state feel really unimportant. Like it didn't matter. Like, ho hum, it's just another day. That's why we want our start state and our end state to be different. And the usual way we do that is we have the end state higher or lower, meaning we improved as a character or we got worse as a character. And yes, visually, if you're just listening to the audio, I did take my one hand and go up and go down. That progression from wherever the start point is through all the developments, whatever they are, to an up ending or a down ending, that's the important part of the arc. Now, whether we're talking about a character arc or a plot arc or a subplot or a romance arc, fine. They're going to have individual different pieces, but they're going to follow that same template of at least 3 or more things. Fight scene, training scene, falling in love with somebody, fighting the evil major monster, discovering the secret of the whatevers, solving the murder mystery, all that stuff. 3 things, okay? Go get your scene list. Go through scene by scene, one by one at a time, all right? What you want to identify here are the scenes that are just your main plot. Just your main plot. Just your main plot. We're going to do the other plots in a second. But I want you to identify the main plot. How do you tell the main plot from all the other plots? Here's your big major second draft element. You can tell your main plot from your other ones because the main plot either A, involves the highest amount of danger, stakes, or reward. B, involves the most number of characters consistently. C, it's the thing that everybody's doing, and if they don't do it, the story comes to a screeching halt. It's the one unavoidable conflict, challenge, or list of events. It is not just a recitation of procedural stuff. They go A, they go B, they go C, they go D, story done. That's great for children's books. If you're writing a children's book, by the way, you don't need a lot of what I'm talking about tonight. But the minute you're into like reader, even early reader, middle grade, young adult, new adult, elder reader, which is a terrible term, all the way through. This is the foundational stuff. You need to identify what scenes are your main plot, in what order over the course of the whole book. That's why we wanted you to number them. That's why we did them in order from first scene all the way to last scene. Where's your main plot? Again, keep in mind, look for those deserts. Look for those big-ass gaps where all of a sudden you took this weird detour for like 5 chapters and didn't talk about the main plot. Just track the main plot for now. If you're a visual person, it might help that you do this in different colors. That makes me feel anxious, but for you, perhaps that is the magic key you need to unlock untold levels of creativity. It's fine. Do whatever works for you. The important thing here is that you can say, by the time this part is done, okay, my main plot is scenes 10, 22, 23, 24, 27, 31, 33, 35, 36, 38, 40, or whatever numbers they are. I just made numbers up. You don't have to make your numbers match my numbers. But you need to be able to identify what scenes are your main plot. In particular, you need to be able to identify what scene starts your main plot, what scene is your climax of your main plot. We're going to talk about that in a second. And what scene starts the resolution of your main plot. You got to identify 3 of those multiple moments, okay? 3 scenes that do that work. Why do we need to know the scene that introduces it? Because that's the bridge from the first act to the second act. Also, you should know where your plot starts. Your plot should start nearer the beginning of the book than it should be nearer the end of the book. Do not be that writer who starts their plot like 4/5 into the book, Don't do it. It's not going to work for you. Find out where your plot starts. Map it all the way through. Where's your climax? What's a climax? Climax is the highest point of tension. It's where all the mosts live. The most dangerous, the most risk, the most reward, the most challenging, the most urgent, the most dire. The mosts. They all live in and around one or more scenes that are your climax. Yes, your climax can be one or more scenes. How many scenes can your climax totally be? How many scenes you got? Eventually it needs to be done, so eventually there's going to be an ending, but figure out where your climax is. And then figure out where your resolution is. Here's a fun fact. Where the climax ends, the resolution begins. So it should be pretty easy if you can figure out where the end of one is, because immediately thereafter it moves to resolution. And you chart what you think is your resolution. You do not need to get this perfect. It's just a picture. It's a loose pile of notes for you to help you go forward. Also, this is the first thing we've done, so this isn't like we're carving it in stone. You just do the best you can with this. Identify where your main plot is, okay? Once you get your main plot done with your intro, your climax, and your resolution, we're going to start doing your subplots or your B plots. This gets a little technical. This gets a little messy. Mouthful of tea first, and then off we go. All right. What's a subplot? Subplot is any plot that's not the main plot. That's the simple definition. Why do we care about these? Because in theory, if you go back and look at your scene list with your scenes ticked off or whether or not they're main plot, you should have some gaps, right? Some scenes that are not your main plot, but you know they're something. The something that they should be a subplot. If after you go through your subplots, whether you have one or more, after you map all your subplots, no matter what kind they are, you still have scenes left over that aren't anything, guess what? Those scenes are very likely candidates for being cut. It's okay to cut things. Sometimes it's critical, especially if you're somebody who's like, I'm trying to write this kind of book, and instead you have like 10 times the number of words or 10 times the number of scenes. It's all right. Okay? So let's talk about subplots. Most common kinds of subplots, there's a couple. One, there's a romantic subplot. That's somebody falling in love or having feelings for somebody else. Gender doesn't matter. Identity doesn't matter. Species doesn't really matter. None of it. It's just one character, whomever they might be, developing some kind of romantic, generally romantic. It's some degree of romance, anywhere from, demi-romance to full-on, like, Inuit marriage or monogamy or polygamy or anything like that, or even polyamory or any permanent structure of attraction. It's a spectrum. It's a gradient. Likewise, it can be a gradient across an arc with any number of people. Romance subplot, really useful for showing that your character has depth. Not every book needs a romance subplot, but it's a really common thing to give somebody a partner or have them fall in love or admit feelings for one another. Not bad, not wrong. It's just a thing. It shows up a lot. Identify it. What are its hallmarks? A romance subplot has the following hallmarks. Some of these you've heard already. One, they have an introduction. They have some amount of development. If you really want, all right, you know what? Hang on. I'm going to get another mouthful of tea, and then we will really get specific. I'll just save me the trouble of looping back around. We're going to walk through it at a crunchy level. Hang on. Mouthful of tea. Note takers, strap in. We're going to the races. 1, introduction, also called a meet cute, where two characters have to meet each other. 2, development of feelings. One or more characters involved begin to recognize that they have feelings and like them. The liking them is critical. Even if they admit initially, like, oh, they have cooties. It's fine. They still recognize it. But they develop feelings. You then have the admission of feelings. I think I like you. I think I like you too. All the way up to, I love you. I know. Admission of feelings. Next major point in a romance subplot. Conflict, challenge, something that makes the relationship difficult. This comes in two flavors, internal and external, our old friends. The internal challenge, a character has a feeling about themselves that makes them feel inadequate and not good enough for the relationship. That other person can't love me. I'm a fucking mess. External, some other person, maybe it's an antagonist, maybe it's the environment, maybe it's just the social rule, who knows? But there's some external force that's making the relationship, bad or wrong or hard to do. Oh, I can't date you. There's a social custom that prevents me from this group dating people from that group. In fair Verona, the Montagues and Capulets never get down. Whatever. Internal and external. Do you need both? No. Does it really help if you have both? Totally. But sometimes when you dive in too deep, you turn your subplot into a regular plot. This is a problem for some people. So if you're not writing or leaning towards romance, you don't have to go that deep with this. I'm going to go deep because it's worth noting. Because some people write thrillers with romance subplots. Some people write action stories with romance plots. You got to know the moving parts. So we have a challenge. That challenge leads to the climax, where there's confrontation. That's the name of it. Where they deal with their shit. Whether if it's internal, they have a moment of reckoning. They have some moment of like, no, I'm not that, I'm not a bad person. If it's external, it's, look, buddy, I'm going to date who I want to date. Something like that. They have a climax. They have confrontation. They deal with the problem and they overcome it in some way, shape, or form. Whether that's punching somebody in the nose or having a heart-to-heart conversation or, I don't know, giving up something, whatever they got to do. They have some kind of moment where they overcome the obstacle. And then the relationship, whatever it is, can move forward positively because the people involved are improved. Yes, I made air quotes. Improved. Sometimes you see that shorthanded as better, but that's gross. So they're just improved. Their end state is different than their start state. That's a romance subplot. Other subplot, an activity or action subplot. This usually involves secondary characters or characters who are not the main character. It's giving Robin something to do while Batman's dealing with something else. Sometimes this subplot feeds into the main plot later on. We'll talk about that. But by and large, it's a plot handled by other characters. It is important, but less important when you compare it to the main plot. It's still a plot. It's still a thing, but it's not the main plot. So while, Batman is over there dealing with Mr. Freeze, Robin is there trying to figure out who is also robbing the banks. Oh, fun fact, it's the Riddler or something. Or, your main character is out, doing the major quest of the story with the MacGuffin, and your sidekick is trying to escape from being captured. What are the components there? It's a simplified version of the main plot. Introduction, development, climax, resolution. When you need your subplot, and it's called an action subplot because characters it's action-y, there's stuff happening. It could be a mystery subplot if they're trying to solve a mystery. It could be a dialogue subplot if it's just, I got to go talk to somebody for a while. When you need to take your subplot and intersect it with your main plot, here's how you do it. You want to do it during development before the climax. Why before the climax? Because it is often a good idea to save the A plot climax, the main plot climax. Save it so that it takes center stage, so that it's the biggest deal. And if you use the resolution of your subplot to aid your climax gets that extra information. So if Robin discovers that the Riddler is also helping Mr. Freeze rob banks, then the information and material gained from stopping the Riddler can make it easier for Batman to stop Mr. Freeze. Why is this important? How do we steer this back to the second draft? This is the level of construction you need to be looking at when you're identifying what part of, what arc your scene is. Because what this should look like as you map through all your subplots is you'll see that scene 6, maybe scene 6 is main plot, maybe it's main plot introduction. Maybe scene 35 is main plot climax. Maybe it's subplot meet cute. Maybe it's subplot conflict. Map out what each scene is. Why are we doing this? Because from the top down, you should be able to see, actually it's this hand, John. You should be able to see, I'm making a visual audio, people, I know. But you should be able to see the progression of your story. Where are the climaxes? Where are the low points? Where are the challenges? How evenly spaced apart is everything? If this sounds very technical, if this sounds like I just sucked the soul out of your writing, there's the door. I didn't suck the soul out of it. I just asked you to take it apart. I asked you to get a little technical. Not bad. It's going to make you better later on. Why is it going to be better to go on this way? Because now you can identify your weak scenes. And then you can go make them better. Because if you're looking at your progression, you're looking at all your movements and all your thises and all your that's and go, that's the climax to my subplot? Nah, I can write better. Make a note. Or you might find out that you have a bajillion subplots that are started and developed but never end. You just stopped talking about them, and that's not the same thing. If it doesn't have a resolution, that plot, that arc, whatever it is, isn't over. And I don't mean isn't over in that way where you're like, I'm leaving the door open for a sequel. Nope. Not that. I mean, I forgot to keep talking about this thing, so I just sort of forgot. I can't imagine the face, audio people, imagine the face I'm making right now. You don't want to be in the habit of always just stopping. You got to learn how to resolve. Remember, we talked about this earlier. You got to learn how to finish. This is one of those things you got to learn how to finish. How do I say this? The benefit of being able to take your story apart, other than it'll make your future editors or publishers very, very happy. The other benefit here is that you're able to think about your story as more than just a list of, well, then my character does this, and then my character does that. And that's a fine starting point. But you got to be able to go deeper than that. You got to be able to go more than that. Because you're going to need to. Because a story, whatever it is, whatever plot it is, whatever genre it is more than just a recitation of stuff somebody did. It is not that report we gave in elementary school. Here's what I did last summer. It's more than that. Because remember, this has to move somebody. This has to have meaning. This has to bear some weight. This is your creative expression. Why wouldn't you want it working out as best as possible? Now, if this sounds like a lot of work, it is. But we do it here rather than do it later, so that if you run into a spot where you're like, I don't know what this scene is, you don't have to keep dragging it around. You can do something about it. So let's talk for a minute about what to do with those excess scenes you can't assign. 1, you can cut them. Just cut them. 2, you can Figure out how to repurpose them. They're going to need rewrites. This isn't just a matter of like plugging one thing in and plugging one thing over there. You're going to need to rewrite things to connect the dots better or smooth the edges out. But you can rewrite what you need. Third thing, you can move other material around to support it. Leave it where it is and bring in other things all around it. Okay, scene 15 doesn't work. But if I take scene 6 and I put it next to scene 15, and I take scene 22 and I bring it back over here, I can make this work. Or you can create new things from scratch. Now, I put that item last because you don't always want to get in the habit of always making one more scene. You can. It's not bad or wrong. You can do that. But at the same time, it's not always the right idea to keep adding. Just like you don't want to keep adding in new characters or keep adding new plots. You don't want to just keep adding different things. Sometimes you got to work with what you have. Sometimes you got to learn how to let go. It is very possible that just this far alone, you've run into a situation where a scene you love doesn't fit into your main plot, doesn't fit into a subplot, but oh my God, you really love it. Now, I'm making a face because probably, at the very least, you're going to need to rewrite it to make it fit with what you have. One of these things is not like the other, even if you love that the mostest. It doesn't fit. I would tell you to cut it. Just lift it out, paste it into this other document, this elephant graveyard, whatever you want to call it, and hold it for later. Or strip it down, use it for parts elsewhere, or rewrite it, fatten it up, shape it differently so that it can fit in with the rest of everything else. There's no one single approach here. My tendency would be to cut it, save it, cut it out of the document, paste it somewhere else. But that's because I want you to get in the habit of having a tighter story than a looser one instead. Because a tighter story you can do more with. It gives you more flexibility, it gives you more options, it lets you shape. When you have to make new content, you're less bound by other problems. But if you really, really love it and you really, really can't let it go, find a way to make it work. Find a way to make it fit. Let's come back to the character list for a minute. Because now we're going to look at one particular scene. Pick a scene. Doesn't matter. Pick one. I'm going to get another mouthful of tea. Pick a scene. Any number. Doesn't matter. Oh, that's better. You got to let it sit. Important, fun note about this tea. It's better when it sits. Pick a scene. Who's in it? What part of what arc is this scene? Is it a main plot scene? Is it a subplot scene? If so, what subplot? Is it just a scene you love that you haven't figured out how to smush it in place? Is it a scene that you don't know what to do and you can cut it? Whatever it is, identify this scene. Okay? Why is whatever character, pick one. If there's one, do that one. If there's more than one, just pick one. You're going to do them all. Why is the character in this scene? We're doing this only for the scenes you can't immediately assign to the main plot or a subplot. So these are all your loose, unaffiliated scenes. Okay? Why are the characters in that scene? What do they want? What is their goal? What's going on? Oh, this is a scene where the two of them go rock climbing on a date. This is a scene where the two of them stop at an inn. This is the scene where the spaceship tries to power up but can't. Whatever it is. Okay. What is this scene? Who's in it? Why are they in it? Are the event, not so much the literal events, like the spaceship's trying to power up but can't, but the event in terms of what it represents. This is a scene of struggle. This is a scene of success. This is a scene of whatever. Are you already doing that job somewhere else? Do you already have 4 scenes where everything goes the character's way? Go back and look at your list. What we're looking for here is something called scene utility. Why is this scene hanging around? It might come down to it hangs around because I just love it, John. And that's okay. But beyond that, bigger than that, it might be time to let this sucker go. So what's its utility? What's its function? Oh, this is a scene where, the character has another success. Yeah, but let's go back and look at this list. This character's doing a lot, and they don't really seem to be confronted or challenged too much. Do we really need a 7th victory for this character? A 7th time where things just, oh, golly gee shucks, just go right their way? Probably not. Out it goes. Cut it. Straightforward. Writing is the act of making decisions. Make this decision. Going back to our character list for a minute. Who are the characters who were just in one scene? If that scene's not main plot, if that scene's not subplot, what are they doing there? Could we add in another character, give them something to do? Could we take the character out of this scene, making this scene essentially reasonable to cut, and repurpose it? Does Dottie, who bags the groceries, need to be in their own scene, or can we make them a background thing over in that other scene? It's important to note that I'm bringing this up not because you want to have the fewest number of scenes with the most number of characters. This is not a min-max situation. I'm not doing this to min-max. I'm doing this to identify all the weird little detours and all the weird little odds and ends and eliminate them now. Once you do all this, you got your plot in a little blurb. You got your characters sorted out by what scenes they show up in and what chapters they show up in. And you got your scenes mapped out in number order and in terms of what arc they plug into. And you've made a list of scenes that you've cut or you can cut, and then you went ahead and did that. That's the basic skeleton of your book. Hooray! That is the basis that we are going to build the rest of all our second draft stuff on. We're not done, but that's a major accomplishment. Good job. Thumbs up. Have air horns. Good job. Why did we take the long way around to build this? Because this is the process you're going to do in some way, shape, or form for every draft and every book going forward. Yes, even the first drafts later on, but that's a different discussion for a different day. But for now, your book has a rough shape. Now, there's going to be some holes. It's going to be Swiss cheese. It's going to be patched together with some duct tape and bubble gum. It's not perfect. It doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be in whatever shape this is. Messy, missing stuff, irregular, lopsided. It's fine. We'll get there. Some of that stuff we will address in a different video, in a different stream, at a different time. But for right now, we just need to build the skeleton. Now, once we do that, we have one more thing to cover tonight. So we're almost done. Almost done. But this one's really important, and chances are it didn't show up in the first draft. And it's going to get better developed later on in a third draft. But for right now, we need to plant the groundwork. We need to talk about pacing and theme. We're going to start with pacing. Now, some of this discussion is a little messy because you don't have every scene done yet because the draft isn't far enough along yet. But you need to at least understand pacing at this point because it's going to start coming up more and more. Pacing is the ability of the story to go from scene to scene. Quickly, slowly, and everything in between. How well something is paced is kind of a virtual metronome, keeping time, tick, 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 scene, 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 so that things are nice and straightforward, so that When a scene is fast and intense, it feels fast and intense. When things slow down, they slow down, and it's understandable why they slow down. And it seems that some scenes feel long and more full of tension, and other scenes are just swiftly moved through because we're a snowball rolling downhill. We're getting closer and closer to that climax. Things are accelerating. You control that pacing, one, by understanding what scene plugs into what arc. If you know scene 35 is supposed to be, one of your last scenes before your climax starts, because you're looking at numbers 36 and 37 and it says climax on it. If you know 35 is supposed to lead up to the climax, you know you don't want a scene that drags ass. You want a scene that is paced appropriately. How do we do that? Well, we go look at the other tools. One, the word count and structure, how it's written. Are your paragraphs really long? Are your sentences really long in big giant paragraphs? Because you can use some sentence fragments. It's okay. But how does it read? Is the internal time tick, 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 boom, 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 1, 2, 3, the internal time of the story? Does it go all over the place? Is it a little bit over caffeinated? Is it a little lethargic? All of a sudden we got 2 paragraphs where, oh my God, something's happening. And then it slows way down because people are just talking. And then all of a sudden it's really busy again. Oh my God, the bear attacks. And then it slows down again. Why? Now, sometimes you want that. Sometimes that's what you're trying to do. If that's what you're trying to do, fantastic. It seems like you've done it. But more often than not, you want a nice, steady pace. We accomplish that within a scene, not only by our word choice and our paragraph structure and our sentence structure, but also the number of things that happen in a scene. Take a second, take your scene list, count the number of things that happen in a scene. Make a little note. 2 things are supposed to happen here. 3 things are supposed to happen here. 15 things. And I don't mean like punch, kick, punch is 3 things. I mean like fight is 1 thing. Car chase. Single big events. Zoom out a little bit. Don't break it down on a sentence by sentence level. That solves a different problem. That's not in this video. Don't sweat it. But figure out what happens in each scene. Who's in it? Why are they in it? Do they do the thing they're supposed to do? Or are they just kind of standing around like, oh, wow, look, butterflies? Or are they engaged? Are they doing something? You want your pacing to advance, hurry up, speed up, escalate, improve, increase, whatever you want to call it. The nearer you get to your climax, the faster that pacing should be. Why? Because we're building up to the climax. Now, this is also true in your subplots. Whatever that subplot's climax is, things should ramp up accordingly. So if you have a subplot ongoing in one part of the story, and then your main plot's over there, and their climaxes are at 2 different positions, like the main plot climax happens 15, 20 scenes after the subplot climax, which is fine, then you got to make sure that your subplot climax is not as climactic as your main plot climax. Nothing in the story is going to be as impactful, as a big deal, as explosive, as, oh my God, everything, as the main A-plot climax. Everything else is underneath. Now you can get real close, but there's none higher. There's none more black. This one goes to 11, and everything else is beneath it. Double check that. Now, you're going to have to take a guess on this. You're going to have to guess using your own sense of your story and your own sense of your writing. If you're somebody who tends to deprecate, if you're somebody who's very eager and willing to knock yourself down like 50 pegs or come up with some like, why did my camera come out of focus? There we go. If you're somebody who's really prone to thinking like, oh, everybody else is better than me and I'm hot garbage, your sense of this pacing might be off, and you're just going to have to trust yourself that it's not as bad as you think. But by and large, the issue here is that you should at least get a rough sense of your pacing. It's not the final sense. It doesn't even have to be accurate. You just need something here. You have to have some idea. Even if it's wrong, even if it's going to change later, come up with some sense of pacing. Because when you go back through and you start rewriting these scenes, keeping an idea of like, okay, this scene's supposed to feel tense. How do I make it feel tense? Not just what tasks do I have them do, but how do I make those tasks feel tense? Okay, put it on the page like this. Let me try this. What about this? What about that? But we'll get there. That's a different video. For now, just have a rough sense of pacing. Last thing for tonight, because we flew through this. Theme. Now, if you're going to traditionally publish, theme is paramount. You will not get published without a theme, period. No doubt. If you are self-publishing, theme is a thing that's going to really mean the difference between like 3 stars and breaking the 3-star ceiling. Because you can tell a pretty good story with 3 stars. It's not the end of the world. But you want to get 4, 5 consistently from a number of people, from a diversity of people. Theme is one of the ways to do that. What is a theme? A theme is a lesson that the reader can use your book or cite your book as an example of and then install in their own life. Oh, I should stand up for the oppressed. I should use my powers for good, not evil. I should resist the temptation and communicate better. Whatever your theme is. Found family is just as valid as, if not more valid than biological family. Whatever it is. Whatever your themes are. You should have more than one. Probably less than 5. But 1 or more is great. You're going to want to go back to your scene list for this. And then your character list. But we'll do the scene list first. What scenes illustrate your theme? Now, it's going to be cumulative. Unlike arcs, this doesn't have a beginning, middle, and an end. It's more about adding up pieces to a whole. So there's a little bit of theme here, there's a little bit of theme there, there's a little bit of theme there. And if we add scenes 19, 27, 31, 34, 35, 42, we add those, we put all those scenes together, even though they're disconnected from each other, they're still parts that illustrate the theme over the course of the book. Make sense? If you don't know what your themes are, if you're pretty sure you wrote a thing and it doesn't have any themes, ask for some help. Go ask some people for feedback, whether that's a beta reader or a critique group, or jump over to writernextdoor.com and book a free appointment and I'll help you. Like, you're going to need somebody else to eyeball this if you're not sure you have one. You can guess, and it's okay to guess at this level. Remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. It just needs to be something. But you should be able to identify more or less roughly what scenes are thematic scenes, meaning what scenes deal with your themes. If you have more than one theme, you can have scenes do double duty. You can have multiple scenes involved in multiple themes. That's fine. But there should be some amount of scenes that deal with some amount of themes. Try saying that 5 times fast. Wow. That is where we're going to stop part 1. That's enough. By the time you got this far, you should have the following. 1, you should have a list of scenes in order that mention or reference what characters are in them, and they should describe what kind of scene it is. It's a scene that's part of it's a subplot. It's a scene that's a climax from a main plot. It's a development scene for subplot number 3. Whatever. You should also have a character list that lists what characters arrive in what chapters, what characters do what when. You should also have a plot broken down into more or less a paragraph, 1 to 4 sentences. We didn't really use that, but I wanted to save it for the very end. Why do we have that? That's the basis of your marketing for now. So if you're going to go out and do this work and then go, well, how do I tell people what I did? Go use that as part of your pitch. I'm working on a story where, a very small man and his best friend travel across the world to throw jewelry in a volcano. This is the story about how a woman from a prehistoric tribe has to go shoot dinosaurs with a bow and arrow. This is the story of the hurricane. I don't know. But we're building your marketing basis here. Now it's certainly it's not the final form. Certainly there's going to be way more pieces. We're going to try to add a marketing piece with every one of these second draft lessons. Some parts are going to be more marketing than others, but for right now, this is the base. It's going to change, it's going to be added to, but this is the base. Likewise, this character list, the scene list, all that stuff, the base for what comes next. What comes next? From here, now that we've identified the plots and the subplots, and we figured out the themes, from here, we can look at individual scenes by type. Not just subplot, development, main plot, but like action scene, dialogue scene. And we're going to really hammer those into shape. So if you're doing this at home and going through one at a time, look for the scenes that were problems for you or the scenes that you were the least sure of. Start there. Work with those. Highlight those, and we'll come back to them for episode 2 of Build Better Drafts. Well, Build a Better Second Draft, or whatever it is I ultimately decide to call this sucker. I want to thank you for being here, for checking this out. I hope you enjoy it. Remember, you can find me online at writernextdoor.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, please, please, please like and subscribe and click the bell for notifications. It really does make a difference. I get an email when that happens, and it has big numbers and a big font. Not only does it make me feel like I'm succeeding, it also helps me feel like I'm not failing at life. So help me and click a button. It's free. It doesn't cost anything. Even if, you've clicked a billion of them, click one more for me. If you're checking this out on Twitch, please consider subscribing. If not, following is free. It helps. All that money, all that stuff directly pays for tea and camera and electricity and cat food. And if you want to support more things like this, more series like this, jump over to patreon.com/JohnHelpsYouCreate. $2 a month can give you week upon week upon week upon week of brand new story material, tools, lessons, and everything else. And if you, of course, liked everything that this was, tips are always appreciated. It means the world to me that you were here. Thanks so much for being here. If you have any questions, this would be a great time to ask. Otherwise, we shall depart. I am going to stuff my face with tea, so enjoy my end screen. But if you have questions, fire away. I'm still here. Yes, there's a ton of stuff to think about, and I was so glad you're here, and I hope it helps you think. I hope it really, I hope it makes a difference. The next time I'm here, by the way, since one of you will ask, the next time I'm here will be this Wednesday for the Writers' Chat. That is over on May the 11th. So until then, everybody, have a great week. Take care of yourselves. Love yourself. Make some art. Do your best. And I will talk to you very, very soon. See you.